Good afternoon. As we gather here today in front of this mockery of something so important to people of color here in Memphis, we are appalled and repulsed by the city's usurpation and spin of the rallying call of the 1968 sanitation workers in their efforts to be recognized as human beings. The audacity of the very entity that to this day denies these city workers the things they requested in 1968, the last-minute effort of the current administration to give these last survivors of that system a pittance of money is no more than the dime raise they received in 1968, which Abe Plow agreed to pay because the city would not. All we can say is shame on you. Shame on you, City of Memphis, for attempting to spend the one thing that was theirs in an effort to use its power. When Mr. William Lucy of the National AFSCME office coined that slogan for those garbage men, as they were called then, I am certain that he had no intention that it be used by the very entity that denied their humanity. Until this city faces the shame of its past and its present, it will never be a place which you can be proud of. Thank you for your attendance here today. We are a group of concerned citizens who have been compelled by the recent proposal of the city administrations to violate the First Amendment rights of all citizens. Today, we have speakers who will address you from their perspectives regarding the latest formal effort by the city to oppress its citizens and deny them their rights. In Dr. King's mountaintop speech delivered here in Memphis at Claiborne Temple the evening before his assassination, he said, "All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of the press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right." So as a reminder, we have Ms. Kennedy Scott, Kennedy come forward, and Mr. James Redmond of the Bee Institute and Learning Center. They have an extremely important reminder for all of those who may have forgotten to include, and that includes the current city administrations.
I'm James Redmond, and this is the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events, it is necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal stations to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, to a decent respect to the opinions of mankind. Requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Thank you.
My name is Kennedy Scott, and I will be reading and I will be saying the First Amendment. The First Amendment is the freedom of religion, it is the freedom of speech, and it is also the freedom of the press. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the peace or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Thank you.
Thank you. Kindly, hopefully, some can hear from the mouths of babes that which they seemingly try to ignore. The order of speakers today will be as follows. Pastor Earl Fisher of Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church, George Boynton, of the Vice Chair of the Tennessee Young Democrats Grassroots Caucus, John Merrick on the instant runoff voting, Yvonne Flores with the Workers Interfaith Network, Andrew Al Lewis of the Coalition, and Kedron Franklin of the Coalition.
Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Earl Fisher. I represent the Memphis Grassroots Organizations Coalition, and I am a partner with the Take 'em Down 901 movement founded by Tammy Sawyer. I'm here today as a concerned citizen, but also as a very conscious clergyman who is concerned about the state of the soul of our city. While banners and billboards are being erected and banquets are being planned in efforts to posit the city's sincerity to honor the Prophet King, a city ordinance is being proposed in City Council that would serve as a veil to suppress protests and demonstrations of civil disobedience, the exact tactics that King used to bring attention to public issues. Too often our city seems to be content with talking out of both sides of its mouth. The next several months leading up to MLK 50 are crucial for shaping the contours of social justice in Memphis and beyond for the very foreseeable future. So we must watch and pray. Governmental overreach, police states, and dictatorships don't happen explicitly, they happen subtly through ordinances like this. It is the death of democracy by 1,000 cuts. And if Memphis is not careful, we'll be duped into believing that we can pledge our allegiance to God and Caesar at the same time. But the fact is, we must pick a side. Yeah. King was a prophet. The mayor is a politician. And when a politician wants to organize marches, but doesn't have a substantive policy proposal to cure the social ills that make marching necessary, the soul of our city is in trouble. It's time for lines to be drawn in the sand of social justice and historical reality. The city is leaning towards the wrong side of history. Therefore, many of the grassroots organizers that you see here and all throughout the city are in the process of putting together a people's convention. We will ensure that we have individuals in political office who sincerely and substantively represent the vast majority and not just a privileged few. We are clear in our stance that celebrating Dr. King requires more than banners, banquets, and billboards. Said something months ago, so allow me to repeat. There is no better way to honor Dr. King than to implement economic equity policies and remove the vestiges of white supremacy from our society, both racist statues and racist statutes. Anything less than substantive and structural changes does not honor Dr. King. It is actually blasphemy of the highest order. And we must not sit idly by while the soul of our city goes to hell, being lured by bright lights with no commitment to black liberation.
Get him. Amen. Paint your picture. Paint your picture.
Good afternoon. I'm George Boynton. I am the Tennessee Young Democrats Grassroots Caucus Vice Chair. I was elected to advocate for democratic grassroots activism, but this is not a Democratic issue. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a black issue. This is not a white issue. This is an issue of an elite few who are elected by the many to consolidate that power and to do everything they can to maintain it. What they are proposing is a lot more of the same, a lot more of an advancement of what they've been doing for the past 50 years and beyond. They are proposing to limit the rights of assembly, the rights of speech, and the rights of expression. And if these aren't new policies, which is one of their defenses, it's always been there. Much of this always has been there. But why don't we take this opportunity, as you are, to tighten those restrictions up and to walk those back and to make them what we need them to be. I watched at the Take 'em Down 901 rally where citizens, nonviolent protesters, bystanders, and even members of the press assaulted by police officers, arrested, jailed. And this ordinance gives them the right to arrest any observer, bystander, participant, or organizer. So even if you happen to be walking past in what they call a zone that they're considering the protest to be in, you may be caught up in that, and they are affirming their right to do that. Now, to be fair, they have reached out. They have had conversations. But those conversations, unfortunately, have been disingenuous. Today, the administration released a statement saying that it was negotiated, a compromise. They will not provide a copy of the compromise, and the compromise contains nothing that was in these discussions. So it's more infringement and more lies. These people have proven consistently and evenly that the side that they're on is the side of restriction. Last year, they made the press come to this building by appointment only and not before stating a reason. They have picked demonstrators and protesters and the strongest of them, and they put them on lists. They followed them to their houses. They followed them in the halls of government. They've taken pictures. They followed them at their places of employment. Political surveillance has been illegal by court decree since 1978. This ordinance that they're trying to pass affirms the right for them to forestall public disorder by installing undercover operatives at any time that they see fit, as determined by the police director. And speaking of the police director, whether it's this one or someone worse, that individual has sweeping authority to cancel your right to publicly assemble in groups of one or more. They say that they've addressed a lot of these, but I have not seen a copy submitted to the agenda of the Memphis City Council that says that, and the address and the situations they've addressed as reported to by the media are nothing I remember that we talked about. They want control. They want to monitor. They have a device called a Stingray that allows them to look into your cell phone and to monitor your cell phone conversations. They deploy these at marches, demonstrations, and events. They are trying to reaffirm, via negotiations through court lawsuits and in this ordinance, the ability to use special tactics left undefined. This is an invasion of our privacy, an invasion of our rights, and we must stand against this. We must stand against the mayor, the council, and anyone else who will either stand for this, will push it, will not come out against it. As Reverend Fisher said, we have to pick a side. Which one are you on? Thank you.
I'm John Merrick. I want to thank George for speaking up on this very important issue, and it goes to many issues. I don't want to bring too many various issues into this press conference today, but so I've seen so many overlaps. I mean, as he mentioned with the police director and the issues we've had with them. I've served on CLRB, and we've had every decision we've made, which this was supposed to be an organization that was supposed to bring together police in the community and try to make it a better city. And avoid having issues that we've seen in Ferguson and other cities, yet every decision we've made so far has been shot down and ignored, basically. The same director that walked the protesters off the bridge and gave us hope that we were going to have the come together that we've been waiting on has turned out to just basically rubber stamp no on every single decision we've made thus far. I'm also concerned with this new ordinance. There's some language with the protest ordinance. There's some language that basically requires posting and notifications. As always, sorry about that, y'all. As always, I'm always concerned when somebody tries to quietly limit a constitutional right. This has been pushed pretty quickly through. Fortunately, people like George and others caught it, so we can sit down, and I don't think it's much at all to ask that city officials meet with this group and other various groups to work on an ordinance that's good, and also think it's an opportunity. A lot of complaints I saw online against this ordinance, in fact, are also against the ordinance that existed in the first place. So many people are discussing the new ordinance, but maybe this is an opportunity for us to look at the old ordinance as it stood and see what's wrong there. That's something that I would like to see brought up in the conversation. And while council is trying to basically force this through as quickly as possible, they're also attempting to put something back on the ballot that voters decided in 2008. In 2008, 71% of Memphians said they wanted ranked choice voting, which would have basically saved taxpayers $1 million every 4 years, and it would have gotten rid of runoff elections that no one shows up to. We have these elections. If you don't get a majority, we have our runoff. Most of you that vote in city elections are familiar with this. But there's certain interest groups out there that are able to easily buy these elections through knowing that if their candidate can just get in the runoff, it's going to be easy, because we all know who the small number of people that turn out, those are going to, what demographic they're going to fit, and who they're likely going to support, and what interest groups they're going to likely support. So, and again, my apologies for bringing so many issues into this today, but the issues that we're dealing with in this protest ordinance just so go to other problems that we're currently seeing from city government. And I really do hope that they'll sit down and, again, not force this protest ordinance through too quickly, because, again, I think we do need to more look at the ordinance that is in place, and possibly, instead of just fighting this ordinance, also look at ways we can improve the current ordinance instead of make it worse. But, yeah, the posting thing, I think it said it required, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like 7 days in advance. There has to all citizens and people have to be noticed. I mean, all I see that being is a tactic by people in local government who don't want that protest to happen, to say, oh, you didn't notify this person or that person, so therefore you can't protest. And, I mean, again, this city has a special history with First Amendment rights and the right to protest, and I think that's something that everybody should respect. I'll never forget, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, but I'll never forget when I was working for the city attorney's office, I'd look out the window and see the Occupy Memphis people out protesting every day. And I remember when there was a point when local government was considering raiding the camp across the street. We all got concerned about it. We were able to reach out to the former mayor and say, hey, look, I mean, you marched and for civil rights a long time ago. We realized that some of these people need that the kind of treatment that y'all would have wanted back then too. And we were able to work out a whole thing that ended up, not being the mess it could have been, at least that day. And I hope that again that we all come together and discuss this ordinance so that we can get something that protects the right to protest, while maybe some of the concerns are legitimate. We don't want people getting hurt or injured. It's all nonviolent protests is what we want here. So a reasonable amount of regulation is understandable, but tactics to slow or stop our freedom of speech and right to assemble is it just can't happen. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ivan Flores. I work with Workers Interfaith Network, and I'm a member of Comunidades Unidas en Una Voz. Today, 20 people got picked up by ICE at a warehouse raid. And I know this might seem like it relates to what's going on here today, but it does. If we had a resolution like this, we would not be able to create awareness or create a protest or a march tomorrow or a week from now. We would have to wait a very long time. By that time, that raid would have been forgotten. About a week and a half ago, we had a vigil here about the DREAM Act. And I turned back and I saw the I Am Memphis. I told one of my friends, I was like, I cannot believe they're putting this up there. This is ridiculous.
Shame.
Memphis is becoming a police state. And just knowing that they introduced this resolution last week during Thanksgiving, when they know that a lot of people are with their families, maybe away visiting other folks, they were hoping that no one would find out. They were hoping that they were going to be able to introduce this under the water and not make it noticeable. But thankfully to some of our community members and our Memphians, we were able to notice this very, very crazy resolution that is going to infringe on our freedom of rights and freedom of speech. I'm hoping that Memphians will wake up and will be able to act against this resolution that's going to affect everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Al Lewis. I am a committed member of the Coalition of Concerned Citizens. I'm a retired professional troublemaker and agitator. I came out of retirement to volunteer some of my services. And I'm honored to work with the young people that are these brilliant young people that are going to change the landscape of this city. It's going to happen. April 4th, 2018 will be the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. The eyes of the world and nation will once again look to Memphis to see if the dream is becoming a reality here. Especially because this is where the dreamer was shot down by an assassin's bullet that blew his spinal column out, and literally he drowned in his own blood. During that time, Memphis was among one of the poorest cities in the nation. Its police force was quick to use deadly force and other heavy-handed tactics to instill terror in people of color. So much so that there is a much-vaunted federal court case that outlines when and how police throughout the nation can apply deadly force. That was a consequence of the Memphis Police Department and Brother Walter Bailey, the present county commissioner, who followed that case and took that case to a higher court and got it amended or changed so they just wouldn't shoot us in the back if we were suspected felons. It was so effective against us that as a child I was taught how to run if ever accosted by the Memphis police. We called it getting low. And they taught us to run with our backs bent over so they wouldn't shoot us in our backs if we were suspected of a felony. Still, the citizens of this city rose up, even though they had laws similar to the Strickland, Hedgepeth, and Boyd proposals we are currently challenging. Such laws forbidding rightful assembly and free speech. Such laws and policies were supported by then infamous Mayor Henry Loeb, whose unwillingness to consider the concerns of the citizens led up to the murder of Dr. King. On April 3, 1968, Dr. King had returned to lead another march, and let me say, those same laws were used against him and the good citizens who stood up against the economic apartheid that plagued and still plagues our city. On that fateful night, Dr. King painted his picture, and he took us up on the mountaintop with it. Had he stated he had peered over into the promised land, well, what was the promised land or the valley of death? I don't know the answer. I don't. I just know I watched him that night peer. But here's the problem. His mournful lament was that he might not get there with us, and he didn't. You know the story, cut down by one bullet with a dream, and we, my dear fellow citizens, find ourselves left on the mountaintop, stuck in a 50-year cycle of Groundhog Days like the movie every day without fail. The same things happen all over and over again. Where policies reenacted repeatedly, however, this iteration has just a little more mediocrity sprinkled in with a few more favorite chickens and other barnyard animals getting scrapes off of boss's table. Y'all know what I mean. Those that are hoard the money and positioned to split the vote and to assure the way we stay on that mountaintop. Well, some of us have come out that mountaintop, headed down into the valley. And yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil, Mr. Mayor, because we got a big-ass stick called truth to confront and slay the dragon of lies and the snakes of deceit. These times feel a lot like those times to me, and I certainly don't want to have to deal with how to answer my great-grandchildren when they ask, Pawpaw, what took y'all so long to come down? After 5 decades, I'm beyond tired of waiting. I'm committed to a descent down that mountain, and on it started with and without me, because in July 2016, when thousands of young people just shut this camp town called Memphis down on I-240. You see, most folks forget that the action that King came to lead never happened. The changes he came to champion got lost in the fog of shock and disbelief that an enemy would be so ruthless as to murder a man of peace. April 5th, 1968 was such a day. Shock and disbelief. That's the day after. I remember walking around the city, talking to older people under trees in barbershops, and we were all in shock. We didn't know what to do. But April the 4th of 2008 will happen. It will happen even with the most stringent of anti-First Amendment laws enacted if the administration and council have their way. And make no mistake about it, Mayor Strickland was fully aware and supported this ordinance. And if he didn't, he has to be most ill-informed, incompetent mayor in the history of this city. No, this isn't 1968 all over again. It is a succession of years and times and policies and practices repeating themselves all over again. So here's what we're saying to all of this. Starting February 14th, 2018, the Coalition of Concerned Citizens, along with many of its friends and partner groups, are committing to 50 days of civil disobedience, resistance, protest, activism, proactive acts of support, care, and kindness. We are asking every citizen of goodwill who has always wanted to climb down off that mountain to where the real struggle is to join us. Pick a day, a week, or month to exercise your constitutional right and civil liberties to say no to the tyranny of Hedgepath, Board, and Strickland. It's our Constitution and rights they are infringing upon. And they have demonstrated via a litany of violations that they have no compunction to do so and lie about it in plain sight. We offer to those of you that care to join us in one of our more subdued yet equally important operations on the floor of the Valley, April 4th, 2018 at 6:05, the moment the assassin bullets reported, to join us in a moment to offer up prayers and meditations to heal our cities ourselves. Meanwhile, the struggle is just starting. And now, the good part.
I guess before we get started, TNT, member of the coalition, actually was on that bridge. So a day like this, see all these people that joined since that bridge and many more, it's time to mobilize and continue mobilizing. And that's what this is, a call to everyone in the city. This doesn't just affect protesters. It affects the Hebrew Israelites who stand on the corner and speak their gospel. This affects children, youth organizations who want to sit out and fundraise for funds. Most definitely affect the panhandlers who sucked into this poor city. So I ain't going to spend too much time talking besides letting you guys know we're going to continue mobilizing. Every Saturday, we're meeting, 3 p.m., First Congregation. I'm asking for everyone to join. This most definitely goes out to people who's relative to me, who's a part of street organizations. That's who it most definitely affects. The fact that one person, two people can be together and it becomes a crime, it's an act of evil. So we won't stand for it. So this is a call out to everyone, from the Brothers of the Struggle, from the Vice Lords, to the Crips, the Bloods, Four-Way, Fast Cash, Young Mob. This is for everyone, because this affects everyone. And don't forget, December 5th, we are crowding City Hall to make sure that this ordinance don't pass, our RV don't pass, and we can continue to keep pressure on the powers that be. But we do have a few questions. One, when and how was the administration made aware of this ordinance, and what was your level of involvement? We want to know. 2, when did you decide to broaden the changes and include not only races but parades and public assemblies? We want to know. 3, who was the undercover officer at our meeting on Saturday, November 25th, 2017 at First Congo Church taking pictures of attendees?
We want to know.
We want to know. 4, explain how this most recent legislative proposal continues the pattern of constitutional infringements upon citizens since mayor and city council's inauguration in January 2016. We want to know. Call me now. The right to peacefully assemble and protest is what set our country apart from the old world order of despotic controls. The founders of this country decided after a long train of abuses and usurpations from the crown of the British Empire chose freedom instead. The war has already been fought and won. We will not beg for what we've already gained. Therefore, as a consequence of the mayor's blatant and consistent disrespect of the basic rights of the citizens of Memphis and his mockery of the highest law of the land, we are calling for his immediate resignation. In anticipation that he would not do the honorable thing that the Coalition of Concerned Citizens asked, we'll petition to recall him from office.
Absolutely.
While simultaneously vetting potential candidates to replace him in the pursuing special elections. We also extend the same offer to Councilman Chair Board and any other elected official who dare conspire to indict freedom. Y'all think it's one way, but it's not their way. And so just let me repeat that. We're calling for the mayor's immediate resignation. This is not his first time violating our constitutional rights. They're currently tied up in 2, maybe 3 lawsuits now because of this same type of act. And since we know that he won't do the right thing, come January 2nd, I guarantee you we will be down at the commission office putting a petition to get him recalled. And we will make it happen. So this will end this press conference. Remember, December 5th, we're most definitely back here by the numbers. We need to bring the thousands down here to let him know that our free speech, our constitutional rights belong to us. Saturday, 3 p.m. at First Congo, police show up if you want. It's more fuel to the fire. But we're asking for everyone. We're inoculating the act of mobilization. We have to mobilize. Not just when something happens every day. We have to figure out how to interconnect every day.
All right, there it is.
Thank you for your attendance here today.